Our guest today is the Democratic candidate for Cook County State's Attorney. She entered the race for Cook County State's Attorney in what would be the first open primary election for that office in more than 50 years. Our guest today won a dramatic upset when she defeated 5 opponents in a hotly contested Democratic primary. She will face Republican challenger, Cook County Commissioner Tony Pareka in the November general election. Our guest today is a career prosecutor and a lifelong Chicagoan who was born and raised in the Pilsen neighborhood. She earned her undergraduate degree from Loyola University and her law degree from Chicago-Kent College of Law. Our guest today is married to Dr. Joseph Gomez. She and her husband are the proud parents of 4 children. And when I called her and we went through some of the dates when she could come and speak, some of the different options, she said, "I'd love to come on Cinco de Mayo." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the City Club of Chicago, Anita Alvarez. Anita?
That's right, it is Cinco de Mayo. And when they did call, they gave us several dates, and this was the one that we chose that fit more conveniently in my schedule. But I think it's fitting that I am here on Cinco de Mayo, and for many people who may not know exactly what that stands for, a lot of people think that it's Mexican Independence Day. That it's not. That occurs in September. But what Cinco de Mayo is a celebration of the Battle of Puebla. And it was in 1862 when the Mexican army, who was outnumbered 2-1 by the French, defeated the French in the town of Puebla. Puebla sits about 100 miles east of Mexico City. And the French thought that they were just going to waltz in there and they were going to take over. They were on their way to Mexico City, and they were coming from the port city of Veracruz. And so little did they know that the Mexican army, which only totaled about 4,000 and the French about 8,000, that the French had all the latest weapons available. They had the fancy uniforms, and little they know that the Mexicanos were there waiting for them, and they got them, and they got them well. And I think the analogy could be made to the primary election, because because I too was outnumbered. I certainly was out-endorsed. I was out-financed. I was pretty much from the beginning said, "Oh, you're a nice lady, we like you, but you have no chance in winning this election." And so I said, "No, I can do this. I believe in myself. I believe in my qualifications. I believe in my candidacy. And I can go ahead and I can win this race," and that's exactly what I did. So I think, to commemorate Cinco de Mayo, we should all go out and have a margarita later as well. But I think it's fitting that I be here today, and it's fitting that we talk about the struggle that it took to win this election. As Jay had indicated earlier, in fact, he was telling me earlier how his wife is expecting due any day. I should have, my husband was going to come with me. He's an OB-GYN. It would have been, if she had gone into labor, we would have been just fine. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here with me today, but he's certainly here supporting me in many ways and has supported me throughout this entire election. The victory in the Democratic Party really took a lot of people by surprise. It didn't take us too much by surprise on the campaign staff, because we truly believed in my candidacy. I remember after the election, Andy Shaw said to me, "Were you as shocked as I was?" And I said, "I wasn't as shocked as you were. Weren't you paying attention to this race?" But I think what this election stood for and what we learned through the election. I learned a great deal. As I indicated, I was here, many of you were here during the debate that we had in January, that I'm not a politician. I never ran for anything before in my life. I'm a career prosecutor. And seeking this position as Cook County State's Attorney for me was a natural progression. I felt that, this is something that I have a passion for. I've been doing this for 21 years. In fact, 11 days from now, I'll celebrate my 22 years as an assistant Cook County State's Attorney. And I always felt that that is what made me stand out from the rest of my opponents in this particular race, because I wasn't looking at this as some kind of stepping stone to something else. I was looking at it as a natural progression from my start in this office as an assistant state's attorney and rising to the top. So for me, it was a natural to seek this particular office. And as I went along, in the starting of the campaign and running around and getting the signatures, I've had this crash course in politics. It truly has been a crash course. I had to learn quickly what it took in order to put a campaign together and not to have the finances. And the money was not rolling in, let me tell you. It was not rolling in. But I had a great core group of people that believed in me and a great core group of people who were there to help me tremendously from the beginning. And as I went along on the campaign, this is what I learned. Someone told me early on that, you can run around and knock yourself off running around this county, but at the end, you've probably only really reached 10% of all the voters of Cook County. But I did run around this county, and it's really a big county. I've been to places I didn't know existed. Down in Bloom Township, we were driving. I'm like, am I in Indiana? I should be in Indiana by now. Where am I? It's really a large county. But what I learned as I went around and I spoke to people and I spoke at all these community forums, that my message was resonating. I felt that people were listening to me. People were understanding how important this office is, and it truly is an important office, and it's an important office that you should have faith in the person who runs it. You should have faith in the person who's going to head it. We do a great service to the people of Cook County, and unfortunately people who are going through some traumatic times and being victims of crime. But that's our job, and that's our job, is to be their voice in court. And as I went around the county, and the more I met people, the more I felt that my message was getting out there and that people were going to vote for me. And then it was a very good feeling. And despite what, the experts were saying, the so-called political experts were saying, I was, in fact, getting my message across, and I was resonating with the voters of Cook County, which we all know is the most important thing. So I put a lot of miles on my minivan. I didn't have a driver. I was the driver. And I remember one time getting a flat tire on the Kennedy Expressway, which I ended up missing an entire candidates forum that night. And then at one particularly low moment, my car was towed, and I spent the entire day trying to find it. I can tell you where the Central Auto Pound is. I know exactly where it is. But as I was running around the county, again, I felt that this was something that was a challenge that I could, in fact, overcome, that I could win this case. But as we went along and the money wasn't rolling in, we had to come to a decision, my husband and I, and that was to, in fact, invest in giving the campaign money in order to get up on TV. Because one of the things I also learned was that, I was running around and I was resonating, but the power of the media, which it took for me, a career prosecutor, believe me, career prosecutors run away from the media, okay? We do not want to talk to reporters. We do not want to go on TV. So it was hard for me to accept the fact that, yes, the media has a lot of power, and I was told that if I were able to get up on TV, if I were able to get some commercials out there, because my opponents were already up on TV with commercials, that I'd be able to reach so many more voters of Cook County, and because of that, it would give me a better chance at winning. So despite what the media has reported, as if my husband had $500,000 laying around and he gave it to me, no, we got a loan, pure and simple. We got a loan from the bank, and it was a gamble, but it was certainly a gamble that has paid off, because we both felt strongly in my candidacy, and if I was able to get that money, because it's very expensive to go up on TV, I, in fact, would be able to win this race. My children were quite happy about being in the commercial. One of my opponents actually asked me if those were truly my children. I said yes, they were, and that's really my kitchen. And it was great fun for them to in fact, shoot those commercials and to tell all their friends. And when their friends at school told them they saw them on TV, they thought it was great. So once we got up on the air, again, it was a pleasure. Just when the early voting starting, people would stop me on the street and say, I voted for you. I'm going to vote for you. I'm telling all of my friends and family to vote for you. And it really was a wide cross-section of people, coming from the cashier at my friendly neighborhood Jewel, to a middle-aged man with long hair, tattoos on a Harley Davidson, who told me he voted for me. I kind of went back, and he said, yeah, I voted for you, early voting. I'm like, wonderful, wonderful. So it was a very cross range of people, and I think the results show that as well. I won in areas, northwest side, northwest suburbs. I won in so many cities, wards in the city, out south. It really was all over, and if I didn't win, I came in second. So it was clear that the voters of Cook County spoke, and they chose, which of course I truly believe, the most qualified candidate. But I think that we have seen, especially with the presidential election, so much more excitement and so much focus on the qualifications of the candidates that are running. And I think we are seeing a change. I think we're seeing a change of a more, that the voters are truly intelligent, and they are. And I think we shortchange our voters sometimes, and they do pay attention to those things, and they do pay attention to qualifications, and they do pay attention to who they believe is the most qualified candidate, and not just voting for who someone tells them to vote for. So I think we've seen that. I think we've seen it here in my election. But after winning the election, I can tell you it has been a whirlwind. I keep telling my campaign staff, when am I going to get a rest? I need a little break. But I've had no break. There have been many, many phone calls to get me to speak, and phone calls for me to appear here and there, and I've been doing it. So my time has not slowed down much. I have been just really going all over the place, going to ward meetings and any place else that they're asking me to speak. But I feel that this particular election means a lot. It means a lot to the voters of Cook County. And now that I have won, people are asking, who is she? Where did she come from? And so I need to just tell you a little bit about myself. And as Jay had said, I was born and raised here in Chicago. I grew up in Pilsen, come from very humble beginnings. My dad a waiter, and my mom didn't work, but neither one of them had a high school education. She was a seamstress. My dad passed away when I was 12, and so my mom went to work doing the only job and skill she had was that being a seamstress. But I think my parents instilled in me the sense of how important education is, because it was a struggle for them to send me to Catholic schools. And they always did, though, and myself and my brother and my sister, but it was a struggle. And I always say, when the nuns learned that Mrs. Alvarez could sew, it became like the barter system, because they had my poor mother creating new dresses out of their old habits. It was at the time when they were changing from the old habits into regular dress. And my poor mom was given the task of making a regular dress out of all of this material. And I remember one awkward moment once going with her to the convent, and the nun was undressing, taking off her habit, and there was this layer and this layer and this layer and this layer, and I must have been about first grade. And she went down to her undergarments, and I just blushed and started rapid fire Hail Marys, because I just knew, I don't know what sin it was, but there had to be a sin in this. There had to be a sin in this. But my poor mom made amazing dresses for them out of all that material. And as a result, they would take money off of the tuition or say, you didn't have to pay tuition this month. So that's kind of how I got through grammar school. But I went to Maria High School. I know Paul Green says that his wife is a Maria grad. I, too, am a Maria grad. Went to Maria High School and then Loyola University for my undergraduate. And I know there's a whole table of Loyola people here. I'm very happy. I commuted, lived at home, went to Loyola, and then went on to law school at Chicago Kent College of Law. I was actually a social work major in undergrad. I thought that at one point I was going to go get an MSW, but I kind of fell into law, truly fell into law. But I think I've combined both my social work background with my law degree by doing the job that I do. Because again, I'm there for the victims of Cook County, and that's what I do. So that's a little bit about myself as a person and who I am. I am married. My husband is an OB-GYN, and I do have 4 children. Twins that are 10, my youngest is 9, my oldest is 18, and he's down at the University of Illinois. Engineering, he had no interest in law or medicine, but I'm very proud of him. But I think that this particular job is an important job, and again, that's why I think it's important for someone like myself, a career person, to in fact run this office. I have ideas for this office. Early on, at one of the first candidates forums, we were asked, all of the candidates were asked to give a grade to the state's attorney's office as to what kind of job we're doing. And most of my opponents gave it a failing grade. I gave it a B, and I said, because I think we've done a solid job at providing the services that we need to provide, but I think we can do better, and I truly believe that we can do better. There are changes that we should make in the state's attorney's office. There are changes that should be made in the state's attorney's office, and I think that I am in a position where I know the inside and outs of the state's attorney's office, but I also can offer a fresh perspective and new ideas to take that office where I believe it should be. And part of my whole platform when I was campaigning is that when I was called a status quo or I was called the insider, I kept saying I'm not. First of all, the very fact that I chose to run for this office is change in and of itself, seeing that no woman has ever, in fact, ever run for Cook County State's Attorney. Certainly no woman has ever been Cook County State's Attorney. The office has changed since I started in 1986. I remember when I was hired, I was one of the few women and minorities hired at that time. There were women in the office, but they really weren't in senior level positions. The office now is 54% women. So we outnumber the men. And I think it's time that we see more women in those senior levels and supervisory positions, because obviously we have proven that this is a wonderful job and it's a job that we can do. I think what we need to do better in this office, and I've said this throughout the campaign and I truly believe it, and that is overall we need to be better listeners to the community. What I've discovered is that so many times there are people out there in the communities that, number one, don't know what we do, are confused to see what office this is. I was asked many times, are you running against Lisa Madigan? No, that's a different office. You have to explain what you do. And I think part of the reason that we have this distrust in law enforcement in so many communities in Cook County is because there is a lack of trust, but there's no connection. We need to be in the communities more. People need to know exactly who we are and what we do and how we can serve you best. The community prosecution's offices are something that, because of the budget cuts, we had to eliminate in 2007. And that was a horrible time with the county budget, and we had to actually let go 43 attorneys, which has never been done in the history of this office. So what I've discovered is that now that these offices are gone, we field more complaints, many more complaints from the people in the community about the lack of services and not understanding. For instance, several weeks ago when I was speaking, they were talking, a question came up from the audience about mortgage fraud and about a particular, her aunt had been the victim and wasn't sure, should we go to your office, should we go to the Attorney General's office or the U.S. Attorney's office, where do we go? So I think we need to be better listeners. We need to be in the community more. And my goal is to reopen those community prosecutions offices and have more of them. And I know your question is probably, well, how are you going to do that with the budget? Because we know certainly we're fighting every year with the county board to in fact find funding. But my goal is to, number one, look for outside sources, because we can't count on the county board all the time. We need to look further. We need to look in Springfield. We need to go look for the federal government. There are grant monies available there that we have never even sought. We need to be a little more creative and more aggressive in our seeking of grant funds in order to provide these programs that are truly, truly essential to all of us, and it's certainly the community at large. A goal of mine will be to sit down with Superintendent Weiss and the new head of, I know I keep calling it OPS and they changed the name, but I would in fact sit down with her in order to work on these problems, because as I said, it all goes back to the trust, distrust of law enforcement, and rebuilding that trust and bridging that gap and letting people know that we in fact are there for them. What we have seen, and just recently that we all have seen, the gun violence that seems to be rising, and the increase of gun violence in the streets of the city of Chicago. And I think what we can do with gun violence, we do have laws, that over the past few years we have made them stronger and stronger. I would continue to do that, but I don't believe that it's anybody needs an assault weapon on the streets of the city of Chicago, that we've seen so many young children being killed for no reason. It's very sad when you try a gang case and the Uzi is in the hand of a 13-year-old, and that happens way too often. So we as a community need to do a better job with that. But we also need more communication, because what we have seen is that no one elected official, no one police superintendent, no one state attorney or attorney general could solve these problems all on their own. That it takes a community. It takes much more. And I think what we as a community need to do, and I know there are many business people here, professionals, attorneys, is that we all need to get involved. You should have a business professional who sponsors that little league team, keeping those kids from going in the street, keeping those kids in the park and playing the way they should be playing. How about mentor a young inner city kid, as a business professional, as an attorney? That's what we need. We need more community involvement, but especially we need more involvement from the parents, because it always starts with the family. When I was assigned to the gang unit and I would go and speak to various schools and various parent groups, and I would always tell them it begins at home. It begins with the family. We need the family to be there. We need the mother to know where that 12-year-old is at 12 o'clock at night. So it begins with the family. Just last week, I believe Friday, there was an article in the Sun-Times, and it was a group of mothers in the South. It was I believe, on the South Side. Back of the Yards, right, Back of the Yards neighborhood. And it was a group of mothers who, in fact, have sons or daughters who are somehow involved in a gang, either gang members themselves or somehow connected with the gangs. And they were talking about how, number one, how embarrassing it was for them, but number one, the struggles that they have, many of them being single parents, to in fact keep their kids off the street, and in fact, keep them from committing crimes. And they talked about how, and this is so true, the gangs sometimes, these kids think that that's their family, those are their friends, they're always going to be there. But once they get picked up and charged, it's not the gangbangers who come to visit you at jail. It's not the gangbangers who come to court to watch your case. It's your mom. It's your dad. And so I thought that was a very moving piece, because I think it shows, and I think it's a good step. I think it's a good step because I think it's a dialogue that we all need to have, and it opens up the doors of communication, because I think we all need to hear what they have to say, and we need to be able to offer them some services in order for them to get over this particular point in their life and keep these kids off the street. Diversion programs. Diversion programs is something that we have had great success with, such as drug school. But again, every year we're fighting with the county board to keep it alive. We need to, in fact, increase the funding of drug school. We need to, in fact, expand it. We've seen great success on the juvenile level with the concept of balanced and restorative justice, where kids are given the opportunity and not sent to the juvenile court, not put the case in the system, but in fact get them in a diversion program, get them the rehabilitation that they needed, the ability to go out there and be successful members of society, because the goal is to keep them from going to 26th Street. But we need to take that one step further. We need to have some of those diversion programs at the adult level people. We hear every day about the overcrowding in the jail. We hear about, what are you going to do about how, that's not an easy fix. But I think little by little, if we start offering more drug school, we start offering some other diversion programs on different types of cases. I'm not talking about violent crime cases, but, those lower level cases that will be able to keep, people out of the system and people out of the jail, which of course would benefit all of us overall. Those are some of the ideas that I have. Domestic violence is an area that I worked as a young assistant state's attorney, and it's an area that, again, as we have seen so much here in Cook County, well, just in the state of Illinois, another woman gone missing, and we don't need to wait for another woman to go missing before we discover that, hey, we should have more services. We've done some great things in domestic violence. Mr. Devine, in fact, implemented the TAC program, Target Abuser Call, where those cases on domestic violence cases get special attention. And those cases, in fact, the Target Abuser Call is a national model now. So we've done some things, but again, we need to do things better. I think some of it, we would benefit here if the assistant state's attorneys who in fact serve in our domestic violence unit go through the 40-hour advocacy training, which the advocates, the domestic violence advocates, and I don't know if there's anyone here that works in that area, but the domestic violence advocates go through a training, and we should have our assistants do that as well because of the cases that they're dealing with and the people that they're dealing with. 911 tapes are extremely important here in Cook County, and any domestic violence case. We need to do training, more training of 911 operators, because now we can try cases with evidence-based, testimony, and so the 911 tape gets admitted into evidence, and that's extremely important. So it's important to have as much information and specifics that you can on the 911 tapes. There is also a program up and running in Brooklyn, New York, where 911 tapes are transmitted directly to the courtroom, and the DAs in New York have the benefit of that for purposes of bond hearing and, of course, for the duration of the case. We get them eventually, 911 tapes, but we need to subpoena them, and if we don't in 30 days, we don't get them. So that's a program, again, that I would seek to implement here. Again, that would take more effort through working with the with the Chicago Police Department in order to implement something like that. But these are new programs that are needed in our office. We have seen an increase, and I was talking earlier today about the mortgage fraud cases that we've seen, particularly hitting seniors. We had an idea several years ago. It was never implemented, but I would try to implement it again, and that is to create a separate mortgage fraud unit. We do handle those cases, but out of two separate units now, financial crimes and consumer fraud. But we need to, number one, have a centralized unit, but we also, again, this goes back to the funding, because we're always fighting with the county board to be able to fund these things. I have an idea as to how we can fund that, and that is our auto theft unit right now is funded through every auto theft policy, insurance policy that is written. You pay $1 extra. That $1 extra goes into a special fund, and it funds our auto theft unit as well as other auto theft units and other prosecutors' offices. We had that same idea, and we tried to create that with mortgage fraud. And that is, $1 on every title that's issued be, in fact, put in a special fund in order to fund this particular unit. If we had, the title companies were all for it. We met with some resistance from the financial institutions. But that is something that I want to, in fact, pursue because obviously it's a unit that's needed, but also it gives us an opportunity to get the funding elsewhere as opposed to the county board, because I know that's going to always be a problem with our budget, and that is the county board. But I think it's time for certain members of the county board to stop, just speaking and start, in fact, creating some ways for us to increase our funding to be able to have us increase the number of programs, particularly diversion programs, to implement. Many of the county board members speak, including my opponent, and have all great sound bites, but what have they actually done? And that's not much to help us with our budget. We have an operating budget of about $96 million, and every year we're taking a cut. But I think think we've done a pretty good job at staying within that budget. We've never gone over our budget. We have made the cuts that they've always asked, but we get to a point where we can't make them anymore. And I think the problem with the county board is that they put all of our offices together. I mean, every county office, the recorder's office, the treasurer's office, you can't. You have to look at each and every office individually. You have to see what the core mission of the office is, and we are law enforcement. We are law enforcement, and that's something that we can never lack in funding. There should always be money for law enforcement, and so I believe that the county board needs to look at our office that way, look at the core mission. We can't automate, you can't put an ATM in the middle of a courtroom. These are real people, and these are attorneys that we're dealing with, and we're trying cases. And so because of that, that is something that the county board needs to do a better job at looking at when they, in fact, every year are telling us to cut across the board. We can't cut across the board. They really need to look and see what exactly each and every office is doing. Those are some of the ideas that I have in this particular office, and I know that I have served in this office, which is coming on 22 years, starting as a young assistant in appeals, domestic violence, working my way up. I served as the supervisor of the public integrity unit, so I was the only person, the only candidate, and certainly it still are the only candidate, that can stand up here and say to you that I have in fact prosecuted and convicted 3 Chicago police officers in the now infamous SOS unit. I tried those cases, convicted them of home invasion, armed robbery, official misconduct. So I tried those cases. I know what it takes to put those cases together. I know what it takes in order to work up those types of cases. And so I'm not afraid of them. As far as corruption, which is a catchword phrase that I've heard so much along the campaign trail, I'm not afraid of it, and I would continue to do it. But again, I also need to remind everyone that our core mission in the Cook County State's Attorney Office is and always will be violent crimes, because that's what we have to do. We have to handle those armed robberies. We have to handle the murders. The U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't do that. That's our job, and so we have to make sure that there is a balance. And I believe that my working knowledge of this office and the fact that I ran that public integrity unit, I know what that balance should be. And I know that we need to get more auditors, we need more financial investigators, because obviously those corruption cases are financially based most of the time. And so that's something, again, that the county board certainly hasn't always listened to us about. So that, as far as corruption and police corruption, it's certainly something that we need to stay on top of. And I would never look the other way. I haven't looked the other way, nor I would ever do that. I think we need to also understand that the U.S. Attorney's Office has their job to do, and they're going to continue to do it. And sometimes we can't compete with them. They have a federal wiretap statute that's not like ours. We are a two-party consent state. So in fact, they can do more than we can do. They have more resources. They have a longer statute of limitations. They have much better sentencing structures than we. So when things do go to the feds, it's usually for a good reason, and they are able to do more with us. But that doesn't mean we haven't tried. And just recently we tried, and we've in fact indicted the county, I'm blanking as to her name right now, but from the POETS grant, the misuse of grant funds, the South Suburban Police Chief, school chief that misused grant funds. There are many, many cases coming out of our financial crime unit focusing on corruption. So that is an area that I will stay on top of, an area that, again, I will not look the other way. I don't know if you're telling me you're standing up, so I'm afraid I'm going on too long. She talks too much. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just want to end with one story, and that is the day after the election, when we were being interviewed, my family was being interviewed at breakfast. I had a gut-wrenching experience with my little guy, who's only 9 years old, because a reporter on live television put the mic in his, to him and said, how do you feel about this, and how has this affected you and your family? And I was a little worried that Louis was going to say something like, she's never home, she missed She missed all my hockey games. She forgot to pack my lunch. But he actually was more presidential than I thought, and he said, well, I missed her, but I'm really happy she beat all those other guys. And I want her to come home and make me chocolate chip cookies, which I did. So Louis is very proud of me. My family is very proud of me, and I would like to continue to have the voters of Cook County proud of me. So I would look for your support come November. I know my opponent, who knows what he's gonna pull out of his bags of tricks. So I got to be ready. I'll be ready for him, but I'm going to run the same kind of campaign, and that is a positive campaign. So thank you.
All right. We have several questions. We have David, where are you? Raise your hand. If you want to give David a question, we have to go. But first one is from Fred. Where are you? Fred, sir. There he is. I want to identify him. I knew him when. A non-member. This sounds like it's like a communist front organization. Do you have any plans to allow younger assistant state's attorneys to ascend speedily to felony chairs and supervisory positions?
Well, I think, are you an assistant state's attorney? No. Okay. No, I think what we need to do, and my plan is to reorganize and restructure the way ASAs come through the system, because we've lost a lot of good ones at that 2- and 3-year level because there's no movement. And we've lost so many good ones. So my plan is to restructure the way you come through the system so that you reach the felony trial division quicker. That's my goal. And it's something that I've actually been working on for the past year, trying to figure out exactly how we're going to implement this.
Very good. From Joy Saxon, troublemaker. Do you get any help at all from the Cook County Board President?
Well, I've only met the Cook County Board President once, but, as I am the Democratic nominee, the party has pledged their support behind me. I would assume that includes Mr. Stroger, since he's part of the party, but I have no personal relationship with him.
Okay. From Mike Gonzalez, a supporter of yours. Can you contrast your management style to that you perceive will be conducted by your opponent? Remember, we have young people in the audience.
Well, what I've seen from my opponent so far, it looks like he goes to great lengths to misinterpret things and misconstrue things, and attacked me the day after the election, and he started attacking me a month ago. That certainly isn't my style, and as I said, I would continue to run a very positive campaign. I think my style is different. I think I am a better listener. I think that I can create or foster more inclusion in our office. I've been working on that for every time I moved along in the system, so I would continue to do that.
This is from some woman named Topinka. Will you use your subpoena powers to ferret out corruption in Chicago and Cook County?
I will never misuse my subpoena powers, and I think maybe that goes to my opponent as well. But I will, in fact, honor the grand jury. But I will take it wherever it goes, regardless of who might be the target. If the evidence is there, the evidence is there, and that's where we will take the investigation. That we have always done that when I headed public integrity. That's the way I always did it, and that's the way I will continue to do it.
This one's anonymous. How would you differ in your approach to the office compared to your current boss, Dick Devine?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Dick Devine, and he allowed me to be in the positions that I am in. But is my style going to be the same? No, I don't believe it will be. And again, this office has done a solid job, but we can do things better. Again, part of the reason I think we need those community prosecutions office, we need to be more in the community. We've seen that kind of go away a little bit in the last administration, and we need to bring that back. We really, truly do. We need to be in the community more. So I think in that respect, it'll differ from Mr. Devine's.
This is from Michelle Kunz. It deals with police brutality. How would you cover that in your speech? Maybe you just reiterate. How would you deal with those issues?
With the police brutality, as I said, now we have the benefit of taped interrogations, which we didn't have before. We now have a unit called the Professional Standards Unit, which I, in fact, took part in implementing and training OPS investigators for that unit. So we have a protocol that's been put in place to handle these cases, to get on them early, and we have charged these cases. So it's not something, again, that I would turn a blind eye to. It's certainly something that's part of the problem that we have, the distrust in law enforcement when officers do get away with these type of things. But so it's something, I think we need to be more proactive, though. I would love to have more investigators in that unit. I would love to be able to do more with long-term investigations. Again, that takes resources, and that's something that I would hope the county board would give me.
Last question that I have. Are you in favor of reinstating parole in Illinois? Illinois is one of the minority of states that does not have parole. This is from Cynthia Coble, a member of the City Club.
Well, I think you can't talk in generalities. Every case, it's a case-by-case determination, and that's something that you have to look at the case and look and see was it a violent crime, was it not a violent crime. We do have people who are on parole. The sentencing structures have changed so that some of them aren't eligible as they were before, but I think it's all, again, you have to look at it case by case. You can't just talk in generality that everybody gets out. You have to really look at all the facts and all the evidence.
That's it. How about a big round of applause? We got this. Anita, you're going to have a complete set of 8 by the time you're done. A mug. We gave you a history of the book of the City Club, and another one-year membership. They don't run consecutively.
Oh, no.
I want you to know that. Before we go, 3 quick announcements. Number 1, Joel Ahorn, we have with us the new Channel 2, 10 o'clock, per Ann State, who may be invited to give the State of the State address. There you are. She is standing up. Number 2, I am called the beacon of balance. I am the white line down the middle of the road, right, Mr. Berkowitz? Yes, my wife went to Maria High School. Yes, my wife's a big supporter, but I am still the beacon of balance, and Sister Margaret, I hope she hears that. And number 3, I have to give an apology. I have with me around I thought I'd had with me 50 of my analysis of the primary, you won, and Skinny, the detailed analysis of how she won. I will bring them next Monday for those of you who want one, or if you give me your card, I'll send it to you. My apology, I was just so overwhelmed with work. Anyways, we are adjourned. Great job, everyone.
Oh, thanks.